Hi everyone, in this training video we are going to talk about appropriate interactions with youth. It's really important to understand that professionalism is of the utmost importance when you're working with youth. There are biological reasons for that. Young adult brains are in a very active phase of developing, maintaining, and pruning synaptic connections. We know that neurobiologically. They are highly impressionable people. They're also fickle and sometimes erratic. Young adults seek mentoring relationships as a transition from being parented to becoming independent, which is why friendships and mentoring relationships are so important. But it's really important to have a professional distance with youth. I'm going to go over some best practices for working with youth of any age, and you could probably even apply this to your workspaces with people who are older than young adults. All right, so I just want to briefly review the cognitive development stages that were suggested by Piaget. When a young child is developing, they start in a sensory motor stage. And so they're constantly exploring. They're very tactile, they're very inquisitive, they're very innocent. They move into the pre-operational phase where they're now really putting concepts together. And even at this young age, now that they have started to verbalize, they can start putting some of those verbalizations into thoughts. They become, really thoughtful about what they're saying. They tend not to have a filter, if you want to think of it that way. And they are trying to make sense of the world around them. When children reach ages 7 through 12, they enter the concrete operational phase. And so now they are starting to operationalize the different principles that they have learned in the previous two developmental stages. So whereas the first one with sensory motor is about exciting all of the different senses to bring in information into the brain, and the pre-operational is about trying to organize all that information. The concrete operational is when they're starting to set up rules on how the world operates around them. And then the formal operational is when they're starting to execute those rules. And that is the stage in which you're going to be working with youth, ages 12 and onward. In MedWork, these are going to be youth that are going to be 17, turning 18, or maybe already 18 years old. So they are definitely in the young adult phase. And so they are, I guess officially you could say they're moving out of formal operational, but they are still very much in that stage. And different people are at different emotional and intellectual states as they age. So just because someone is 18 or turning 18 or does not necessarily mean that they have fully mastered any or all of these stages. And so they, even though Piaget says that this is a linear movement or linear development, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are that they have fully matured in how they look at the world. So let's take a look at the next slide because it gives some really concrete ideas to these different stages. So as I mentioned, in the sensory motor stage, this is where children are starting to use their senses. They're responding with their motor abilities. They're really curious about everything that's going on in the world. They're very innocent. They are taking up information like sponges and trying to figure out what to do with them. The brain is developing to create synapses of what is important and what is not important. At the pre-operational stage, when they go to approximately 2 to 7 years old, they're now starting to really put these concepts together into a way of thinking about things linearly and even abstractly. They're starting to use imagination. They're starting to put down concepts. And again, they're starting to develop rules of the world around them. They're starting to use language, which is a really big part of someone's development, both in understanding and in expression. When they move to the concrete operational stage, which is ages about 7 to 11, they're now really putting rules to situations. So these are concrete ideas and how they should respond and react to different kinds of situations. Um, they are starting to understand linearity of time and consequence, but they're not quite solid on how that all works. And then formal operational, now they're really starting to think at an advanced level. They're starting to think abstractly. They're starting to use logic. They're starting to use reasoning. They're at all four of these stages. Young people are still very much influenced highly by the people that are around them, and they trust people. This is my opinion. I think young people trust their adults and mentors inherently, and they have to actually learn how to not trust somebody. And so it's really important that during all these developmental phases that we provide that professional guiding boundary for them. So you are going to be interacting with young people who are reaching the end of the formal operational stage. And so they are going to put a lot of trust in you, but they also need a lot of help putting all of the rules together and creating concrete plans for how they're going to move forward in their lives. So what does it mean to be a professional when you're working with people? So I think one of the first things to consider is that you maintain an appropriate distance. So it's essential that mentoring relationships develop in a professional manner with clear boundaries. Clear boundaries, clear start and end points, clear expectations throughout the relationship. I would start by learning each other's names. You might even want to lay down the ground rules and the expectations of what is going to happen in the small group. It is good to probably even define what it means to be a friend and what it means to be a professional and what a professional relationship looks like. You will probably find that your mentoring relationship will develop into a friendship, but that takes time. I would certainly start this relationship in a professional manner and let it evolve within the professional boundaries that you both are comfortable with. So expectations are really, really key. Expectations of what the learning space should look like, how things should be communicated, what the role is for the mentee and for the mentor. Even in an online environment, it's really important to use what I call an open door policy. So, in the office, we have an open door policy of access to people and to each other. You may want to establish that online open door policy. Make sure that policy is clear on how to access one another, how to establish rapport with one another, what kind of conversations and actions are appropriate. All of these things are super important when you're establishing this professional role. Keep in mind that, and I've said this before, the internship that's happening here through MedWork is not the start of a friendship, although it could move to that. But just make sure that the boundaries are appropriate and that everyone that's involved understands what those expectations are. That takes me to respect and physical contact. Respect is what is earned when people's expectations of each other are very clear and that people operate within those boundaries. You're not going to have an issue with physical contact in MedWork because you're going to be doing everything through Mentor City. But even how you phrase things in terms of, you're not going to be placing your hand on someone's shoulder or anything like that, but your voice inflections and how you phrase advice that you might give. You don't want any of your phraseology to be misinterpreted as a quasi-physical contact with someone who is trying to be a mentee under your guidance and influence. So be very careful about the words that you choose and how you give advice. So this might seem kind of weird, but one of the important aspects of a professional relationship and in working with youth is to have good discipline. And discipline starts with engaging instruction. It also is very much associated with expectations, as I have mentioned before. Really invest up front in what your expectations are in terms of how you're going to work together and what is appropriate to say or do. We're going to say this again and again. All interactions need to happen within Mentor City. So it is definitely not appropriate to exchange mobile numbers, for example. That can lead down an unprofessional pathway that we don't want anybody to find themselves in. We want this to be a safe environment for your mentoring relationship. That goes with email as well. We want you to maintain contact through Mentor City, which is fully monitored by the directors of the program and by the administrators of the program. In addition to that, expectations of acceptance and understanding are super important. So again, what are the rules of engagement? I think are going to be really helpful for your mentoring relationship. If there's behavioral problems online, it's important that you deal with them consistently and fairly. So, and also that there are clear consequences. I highly recommend that at your first meeting that you lay down the rules with your mentees together and you establish that if, for example, if people are talking out of turn, how is the group going to handle that situation? And if the group isn't handling it well, how will the mentors handle that situation? So that everybody knows that, okay, well, if I'm talking out of turn, then we know that that is not appropriate and that the consequences might be that we have to stop conversations or end the meeting or we need to start over or whatever your group decides to do to get back on track. And if you have any questions on this one, because it is, there's a skill to creating consistency and fairness in terms of dealing with discipline and consequences, then the directors, we are very much available to you. So let's just say you're not able to work with any sort of behavioral issues and, beyond talking out of turn, your mentees might be rude or they might even be unprofessional themselves. How do you handle that kind of situation? Well, you can, these are good steps, not necessarily in any particular order, although you'll notice that the bottom bullet says, final resort. You can try these as action items. And so I'll just outline them. So recognize the behavior to the expectation. Again, that goes back to establishing expectations as a group on what is appropriate and not appropriate interactions. But recognize that this behavior is going on, and as a group, we decided that this was not appropriate. So how are we going to work through this? That is something you could actually say. You might need to have a private conversation with your mentee, and when I say that, I would highly recommend that the mentors group together have a conversation with the mentee together, so you're not having a one-on-one conversation even within the system of Mentor City. Again, we want to make sure that we have a professional environment and a safe environment for everybody involved. I really think it's important to review the facts of what happened and also to review the perspectives of everyone that was involved, because that leads to the possibility for mentors and mentees to explore explanations and possible solutions for how things can be improved for in the future. I think it's really important to end on a positive note. Try to be as inclusive and supportive as possible of your mentees. No matter how egregious the behavior might be, we need to recognize that mentees are coming to you because they're looking for a safe space for guidance, and we want that space to stay that way. We want it to be safe. I like to give feedback when it's appropriate. If my mentee or sometimes student is in a headspace where they're able to accept feedback, sometimes you might need to wait for them to ask for feedback. But you never, at least in my opinion, you never want to use feedback as a bully pulpit. You don't, and we're going to talk about feedback in another video in a lot more detail. Feedback is very important. That's how students learn. That's how mentees learn. But it has to be given and received in a safe environment and space. So if things are heated, that is not the right time to give feedback. Definitely say, it's okay to say, clearly this conversation or what's happening right now is not going to get solved right now, we're all very we're all very heightened on our emotions and we need to take a break and we can revisit this later. That is perfectly appropriate, and I highly recommend doing that. So as a final resort, or maybe even as a first resort, you're welcome to speak with us coordinators. So here's a couple of secrets. So I like to watch for students when they get non-engaged. Not if, but when, because it will happen. Even if you have the best content and plan, as we've advised before, at some point, your mentees, maybe even you, is going to drift off. And usually when you drift off, that's when undesirable behaviors happen. So try to pull them back in. Try to engage them in a way that is interesting to them. Remember, hopefully, definitely throughout the year, you should get to know your mentees in a professional manner that you can understand how to appeal to their interests and to what they want to accomplish during those relationships. Beware of sarcasm. This is especially true of young kids that are on the earlier stages of the Piaget's development, but it's still true for teenagers, because as I said before, for teenagers ages 12 and up, 11 and up, they are still really forming rules in their head on how things should operate, and so they're very impressionable, and they might not be at the same maturity level from one person to another. So the problem with sarcasm is it's really hard to interpret. Young kids, young adults are, again, they're still trying to establish the rules and figure out what's going on. So when you use sarcasm and they don't understand that it's sarcasm, they might actually take it literally. So you have to be very careful about what you say. Again, I said it earlier, be very careful about the words that you use. Being firm, fair, and friendly. Again, if you are, if you've established good expectations, make sure that everybody is treated fairly under those rules and under those guidelines. I am a big proponent of being positive rather than negative. When you have a negative energy around you, it's just really hard to maintain the attention of the kids, let alone keep their discipline. And then again, remember that we want this to be a happy space, not just for them, but also for you. So some expectations of you as mentors. So we would like all mentors to attend every session unless prior notice has been given and approval has been received. When these kids are coming to their mentoring meetings, they're expecting you to be there. And when you're not there, or when you're not even in the right headspace to work with them, that can be really disappointing. They might have been looking forward to. I mean, in most cases, you'll probably not see them except from month to month. I mean, you and your co-mentor might decide to visit with your mentees more frequently than that, but our expectation is a month-to-month visit. And so when a mentee has been waiting that long to speak with you through Mentor City, it's going to be really disappointing if you're not there physically or mentally or even emotionally. So do the best that you can to be prepared for that time and space. It's as part of that, it's real. In addition to being present, it's also important to be on time. Being punctual is a sign of respect for the other person and for that space. So please be respectful of your mentee's time. They're devoting their time to you, and you should have the same expectation of them. We want the mentees to show up, and we want them to show up on time. Now, granted, there are always going to be extenuating circumstances. That's okay. But try to notice if there's any truancy patterns, and we'll work together to work with them. So you might want to log into Mentor City 5 minutes prior to the start of the session, just to make sure that everyone is present at the appropriate time. Other expectations that we have of you: please be prepared. You may want to have a plan from when you last met with your mentee, or you might want to have some goals that you'd like to accomplish during that meeting. This is separate from the SMART goals, but they could still be in the SMART goal format. But be prepared. And as we've been talking about over and over again, Be professional. You are the mentor, they are the mentee. You have to set up that expectation. Be a positive influence to your mentee. They are looking toward to you for guidance. They're also going to model you. So, have a good attitude as you're going into it. Try to refrain from diction or language that really sets a negative tone and a negative space. You do have to be sensitive to the mentee's perspectives and resources. They should be respective of you as well, but keep in mind that they are at a different developmental stage than you are. So you are the quote unquote adult in the relationship. You are the mentor. And so you're the one that sets the expectations. So I've said this before, the number one rule in interacting with youth is to, in MedWork, is to use Mentor City for all communications. We would like you to avoid contacting your mentees outside of Mentor City simply because it's not monitored, and we want to make sure that your relationship is safe and isn't open to any undue influence that could be misinterpreted. All right. Thank you very much.